Hello everybody and welcome back to the Retro Recall. I hope you're doing awesome. Today we have Motherboard Mayhem Part 2. Oh, that's 4. 2. Literally motherboards that have been donated or ripped out of machines or thrown in a parts bin. Figured what we would do is pick 5 more. And these are randomly picked literally from the top down. There's still a lot more motherboards out there, but I figured what we would do is take 5 motherboards like we did before, go through each one of them, just kind of do a general overview of the board, see if we can detect the manufacturer, and see if we can get them pumped up, like get them booting, you know? And if we can't, we can't, but then we note them and see what we can do to get them repaired. But yeah, let's just get started and get right to it. And here we are all set up on the bench with our nice motherboard, number 1. This particular motherboard, let's take a look at it. So we have an HT2000 board. Now, I believe this would have came from one of those pre-built Acer towers. So, I mean, there's a date code here showing 2007-01, so January of 2007 is what's written there, I believe. Yep. And the model of the motherboard is MCP61PM-AM revision 1. And that seems to be duplicated in other locations as well throughout the board. I mean, looking at the board, I mean, it seems pretty standard motherboard of the time. I believe that this motherboard is, I mean, it's sporting an AMD fan on top, so assuming it's an AMD, I believe it's AM2 is the of this board. I believe it's the AM2 socket, which is usually the Athlon 64X2 CPU. I am going to take a peek at that here as well. And there's a date code of 2007-02-26 on the heatsink and fan. So definitely part of this board. And so looking at it, I mean, we have our PCI Express slots, our 16 and our 1, and then we have 2 PCI slots here as well. You know, and we have our SATA connections and our front panel IOs, multiple USB ports here, and various ports. So again, when you had machines such as that, such as these type of pre-built machines, you'd have a bunch of different front panel headers. Now, I would think that the motherboard manufacturers would cater to the OEMs to create motherboards that were specific for that purpose. And it looks like DDR2 memory here as well, our standard ATX connector, 2 IDE ports. Yeah, and it seems that the floppy is no more in this particular system. So let's swap it around, look at the front IO here. So we have our PS2 slots here. We have our COM port, which is still existing here, and as well as our printer port, our built-on video, FireWire, 4 USB ports, our network port, and 6 port front panel for sound. It says 8-channel audio written on the silk screen. So definitely an interesting board. And yeah, I'd like just to see if we can get this fired up. So the first thing I'm going to do is just pop in the power to the board. And this board does have the 4-pin connector on it as well. So I'll get that connected here. Oh, there we are. It's not playing nice here just because of the length of the cable. So there we are. And detected it there, no problem. Let's pop it over here so it's not touching anything. And yeah, so I mean, it has built-on video, so I'm just going to utilize that. I mean, I do have other cards I could use, but for what we want to do today and see if we can get this guy fired up, I think that's fine. We'll plug in our PS2 keyboard just so in case the BIOS complains about that, we'll have that plugged in. And I think that's looking pretty darn good there. Okay, now let's fire it up here. Now, I do not have, I'm using my little jumper trick here. I do not have an adapter yet, and I know that someone made a comment in one of my previous videos. I could just cut off, the power button for one of the ATX cases, either I don't want or what have you, and I could just use that and pop it on the headers as needed. But all the cases I have are in use or going to be in use in other videos, so I'd like to go ahead and just use this for now, and I do have one on order right now as well. So we have the fan spinning up there, no problem. I'm not hearing any buzzers or beeps. So this motherboard does have a speaker built on, you can see here. And so I definitely want to see if we can get this going. But that should be making some sort of sound, actually, given the no RAM on board. Okay, I'm going to turn that off. There we are. Let's get our post analyzer card in there, just to see what we're getting in terms of any codes. And I am going to just throw it on here. I was going to go ahead and put some RAM in there. I'm not going to. I'm just going to pop this on to see if anything pops up on there. So we're getting post codes and CF50. So, I mean, if anybody knows what that is, please drop a comment down below. I'd like to know what that postcode is. The chipset's getting quite warm. The CPU is obviously cooling just fine. And I'm not getting any sort of other issues here. I'm going to turn this off and pop some memory in here just to see if that's going to make any sort of difference. Just because I definitely want to see if we can get this going and find out what that could be for an issue. Okay. Flip the switch to the power supply. Let's turn it back on. Same problem. We can also try a different memory stick just to see if that's the issue. Because, I mean, it's doing it with or without the RAM in there. But generally, we would have some sort of, we would have some sort of post beeps. We're not getting those. Same thing again. Now, I did test this memory in another machine I have, so I know it works. Only because I didn't want to get into this and start having to troubleshoot additional issues such as the RAM. Okay, I'm going to turn that off again. I wonder if there's a short or a ground something going on the motherboard. And I'm saying that, yeah, I mean, nothing's getting really hot other than the chipset. But I mean, I expect that to get warm. And I'm just going to look at the board itself to see if there's anything, anything that looks odd. Because, again, just remember the scope of what we're trying to do here is just trying to get the system to post. And if they're not, then we can mark the actual board and then do a future troubleshooting on it just to see. So I'm not seeing anything here. I mean, there's rust on the screws. So there's definitely exposed to moisture somewhere in the world of this machine. And I'm just looking at the caps. Just again, I'm just doing this by eye right now. I'm not going to, I'm not doing anything super fancy right now for what we're trying to accomplish here. But I mean, I'm looking at the caps and I'm not seeing anything here that is giving me any grief. Again, doesn't mean that there's not an issue with the cap, but I mean, there's nothing, like I'm not seeing juice on the motherboard. I'm not seeing any of these guys leaking anywhere. Okay, look at that. I'm going to zoom in there just to see if anyone can see that. That issue is right here on the board. There's a lot of corrosion, heavy corrosion that is on whatever that is, that particular spot there on the board. And so, I mean, it's very possible that that's causing an issue. Again, may not be. I mean, I can get a multimeter out and do some tests there and see. But, there's nothing there that's looking like, I mean, again, there's a lot of corrosion on there. It's very possible that's what's causing the problem. but again, there's rust throughout the board as well, so it's very possible it could be that as well. Let's flip it around here just to see. Just going to take a look at the motherboard itself and see if there's any sort of issues here that I can see with the naked eye. And yeah, I mean, just other than a bunch of corrosion on the board itself and rust in some of the spaces where the screws would be, as well as the adjacent areas, like, you know, there, for example, on some of the solder joints, some definitely corrosion. Yeah, it'd be interesting. Oh, yeah, okay. So this whole corner of this board, you can probably see that on the camera. See, there's been something spilled all through here. And so, again, I'm not exactly sure what that is, but definitely something that could potentially causing some problems with the board itself. So I would say I'm going to put an X on this board because it's definitely going to require some cleanup, some troubleshooting, some multimeter testing for sure, just to see. But we are not set to a good start. I'm going to put a little X here. And the date I'm filming is May 23rd. There we are. So I'm just going to put a little X on this because I just want to revisit this board and see if we can get it going in some form. Let's move on to the next board. Okay, and here we are with board number 2. This is another neat motherboard that we have here. And before I dive into this motherboard, I want to talk about the other one for one more moment. So just off camera, I did check to see that CPU, what was in it. And it is a socket AM2. And the CPU was an Athlon 64X2. And it had 4200 written on the processor. So that's my guess as to what that was as well. So we have another motherboard here, and I'm not seeing a lot written on this board. So it's very possible that it also came out of a machine as well, like an OEM machine. Now, mind you, this particular motherboard as well is not showing any sort of signs of any issues that I'm seeing offhand. It does take SD memory. There's our CR2032. Looks like our AGP slot plus our 3 PCI slots we have here. Our good old floppy connector is back with us, and as well as our two IDE headers. And on the other side of the board, we have our sporting again, our PS2 ports, 2 USB, our printer or parallel and serial ports, our game port this time, as well as built-in audio. And I'm just going to do a once over on the caps just to see if there's anything here that could potentially cause any issues. Oh, there we go. So we do have, it says IBM part numbers. So it must have been an OEM board at some point. It says right here on the stickers here. And then it gives a whole bunch of different information. But it says manufactured in 2000 for this. So it will be interesting to see what this board is specifically when we go to power it up. Yeah, let's just go ahead and get started and see if we can get at least number 2 to post would be nice. Where it doesn't have built-on video, we'd have our good old ATI Mach 64 that I have here that we have tested throughout the channel, and we also have our PS2 motherboard here. So plug that in, and just right off the get-go, we'll plug in the post analyzer card, and we'll pop that in there. And I'm not doing anything just yet, just popping all this stuff in. Oh, that's quite tough to get in there. There, okay. Always good sticking that old stuff in there. It's always tough in some form. Okay, so ready to fire this up. Let's turn the power on and do our little jump here and see if we can get this going. We have something on the screen? We do. Updating ECA, verifying DMI pool data, update success. And that's it. But it's posting. So let's just show you on the board here. It says disk boot failure right away. Insert system disk. So I mean that's a good sign, but it jumped right to this screen. It didn't really give us any sort of other options on the board or give us any information about the board. You know, for instance, what's in it or what's on it. But I'm just really excited that, you know, board number 2 just booted. And that's the way I want them to go. I'm going to do a reset here just to see. Let's do a reset. Okay. This time we're not getting any postcodes. Okay, there we go. So we are into the CMOS here. It's odd that the postcard is not showing me any postcodes there. Okay, it is showing contact there. Okay, so let's go back, and so system summary. Let's click on that. So system summary. So we have an AMD Duron. There we go. So this is our freshly booted up motherboard number 2. So we have an AMD Duron 650 megahertz with 128K cache. System memory is detecting the 128 megs of memory, which is awesome, and the memory speed. Videos ATI, which is wonderful that it's picking that up. And we don't have a floppy drive in there. And let's go through here just to see product data. So this is a particular machine that would have been in there. So it says IBM on the box, but not giving us any indication of CMOS. It is a Ward CMOS though. Under devices, we do have the ability to go in and set up all our different onboard devices and what have you. Nothing major there. Startup sequence, so we can go in and select what sequence we want in here. And I mean, it has quick post enabled. I'm going to disable that just because I want to see if that gives us an option to see date and time. Obviously, I mean, the CMOS battery is probably dead. Actually, more than probably. I'm going to skip over security because it's going, you know, system. So it says, welcome, you know, warning, give us a warning if we start changing different, you know, times and things like that. We don't want to do that. And power management, we'll skip that. So I'm going to save and exit setup. And yes, we'll do a reboot here. And the postcodes are now showing on the card, which is great. There we go. We have an IBM logo. So finally, the first indication is an IBM. And of course, it will pop up and tell us that it's not happy. It wants our software and all that good stuff. Now remember, I disabled the fast post there. There we go. It's doing what it needs to do. So yeah, I mean, we have, this is board number 2. It's working just fine. We're going to give it a thumbs up for this for sure. And we're going to go in and start looking at motherboard number 3. And here we are with board number 3, and see if we can get this mystery motherboard up and running in this crazy mayhem motherboard mayhem series. So we have another motherboard. This time it's written KM400-8237. So, I mean, outside of that, I'm not seeing any other indicators here as to what motherboard this is outside of N1996. So, and the VIA chipset that we have on here as well. We have our AGP slot, 3 PCI. We have a couple SATA ports there, which is nice. So it kind of gives us an idea of an era. We have 2 IDE connectors here, along with another floppy connector. So the floppy is still sticking around with us. On the other side of the board, we have our I/O panel. So we have our 2 PS2 serial built-on video as well, parallel, 4 USB ports, Ethernet built on, as well as our audio. So we have that going, which is wonderful. Now, I do realize that I do not have a fan on this heatsink. I don't have one for this, but I think we're going to be just fine just to get it posted. And with the heatsink, it should provide enough dissipation of heat to get us where we are. And this is regular DDR memory, so we're going to pop that in there as well. We have that in, successful clips going on. And I'm using the built-on video for what we're going to try to do here. And good old post analyzer card, we'll put that in there as well, just so we can show everybody what it is doing. So we have our power, and does this have, it does, okay. So it does have the other connector here. I'm going to flip on the power to the power supply, and we'll go ahead and turn on the power here. There we are. It came on and turned off immediately. Let's try it again. Okay, nothing. We had power and then nothing. So let me just get my power supply go on us. Try one more time here. Nothing. Okay, I'm going to test the power supply again because I want to be absolutely sure there's no issues there. Okay, so we do have that, the power supply working there, no problem. Okay, so that's not the problem. Pop it back into the board. And everything's looking good there. I'm going to pop our memory back in. It's always something fun with these boards, I tell you. It's all part of the fun and excitement of trying to get them going. Okay, we have our board all set there. Let's try it again. So it comes on and shuts off. I'm just wondering if there is a short, because it could be drawing. So I'm resetting the power supply is what's probably happening, and it's fault protecting itself. It's very possible that there's a short in the board, and as I mentioned, the power supply, when it goes to kick on, it works for a second and then overdraws the power and protects itself. So I'm just going to take another look at the board just to see. And I mean, judging by all the dirt and dust that's around this heatsink and stuff, it's not been removed, so not worried about that just now. But I'm just looking to see if there's any sort of visual damage to the board, and just to see if there's something that would be causing this difficulty. And I'm not seeing, of course, I'm not seeing anything just yet. And I mean, the board overall looks to be in great condition, actually. Oh, what's going on here? Yeah, so I see one of the caps. It is definitely loose inside the board there. And it's very possible that could be causing our problem. So this cap right here, this little guy right here, is literally when I do this and move the cap, the legs are shifting with it. So there's definitely some broken solder joints there that could be causing the problem and shorting it out, or just not getting what it needs to get to do anything. So I'm not going to be soldering today. That's not what the aim of this is. The aim is to see if we can get to get these boards up and running, and just seeing if they're post. The purpose is to see if they'll post. And I'm not getting anything out of this guy. So let me just check the processor here. I know we have to get a proper fan for this anyway. So, repairing this motherboard is not going to be a bad idea. I like the motherboard. So we have an AMD Duron as well, it looks like here. And it says AMD Duron. I believe it's, now I'm not sure about the model, DHD1800DL. So I don't know if that's an 800 megahertz Duron, but socket 462 is the socket here. And yeah, I mean, we have another AMD. I mean, that's 3 AMDs in a row now. I don't like having that cap that's loose there, and if it is over, if it is kicking in the failsafe on the the power supply. I just don't want to cause any damage to the board if it's not already there. But I am going to look up the motherboard real quickly just to see what it says for manufacturer, because I mean, we have the KM400 on the board there. It looks like an ECS motherboard. I mean, it's in good shape. I'm not worried about that. I am going to fix that solder joint, and I'm going to go over the whole board just to make sure that everything on it is what it should be, make sure there's no additional shorts. I'm not seeing any capacitor leaking or anything like that, and I'm not seeing any sort of visible signs that there's corrosion or anything on the board. But if it's causing that short, I definitely don't want to spend too much time on potentially damaging this board by continuing to try to boot it up and troubleshoot manually without actually performing the work on it. So on that note, so we have one board, number one, not working at all. Number two, booted up right away. We had no problems. And number three is trying to boot. It does show a postcode, tries to cycle, but then powers off within a few seconds. And I think that's the fault protection on the power supply. So let's move on to motherboard number 4. And here we are with board number 4. Another looking good, nice looking board here. And it's a purple board that's labeled Sempron. So maybe that's a hint of what is in here in terms of this processor. And sure enough, we have an AMD Sempron. It says SDA 2400 UT3D is the model number on the processor. The motherboard itself is a 741GX-M with a Phoenix BIOS. I'm curious to see what that manufacturer, who the manufacturer would be of this particular motherboard. Okay, so what I'm seeing here is made by ECS as well, Elite Group. So we've had a few of these now. We've had 3 of these boards, and they must have been, you know, I don't know if they're considered entry-level motherboards or not, but yeah, I mean, the feature sets of them would have been, looked to seem okay. So, I mean, it looks like DDR memory here as well. We have an AMD socket 462, and this is our 4th AMD board. So we have 4 boards. All 4 have been AMD. And yeah, so I mean, that's AGP slot there. And then we have our 3 PCI and our CNR slot there as well. And we have 2 IDE ports, and our floppy guy has been sticking around for us all this time. It's great. It was missing us for one motherboard and is back up and going. And then we have multiple various headers that are here as well. And on the front panel, we have lots of good I/O as well. So we have our 2 PS2, our serial and parallel, our video built on as well. Very convenient for the series, of course. So, I mean, otherwise we just use our trusty video card there. We have 4 USB slots, built-in Ethernet, and 3 audio. Now, 3 audio ports, built on audio. Now, if you've noticed, the I/O layout has been almost identical on the last couple motherboards. So, I mean, being Elite Group motherboards, I mean, obviously they're keeping to a certain standard, but be very helpful in terms of getting an I/O shield for these guys plugged in and all that good stuff. So we have our memory installed, and we have our CPU installed, and we'll pop in our PS2 port and get our power supply connected. Now this one does not have the 4-pin, so it should be slightly easier to get, you know, just because of where the power supply is mounted. And I'm trying to do this in a test bench type case area here. You know, I really have to invest in a test bench there. But anyway, we got that there. It's good. And then we'll plug in our video. We have our video plugged in here and to our onboard. And again, there's nothing touching anything here. We're all good. Okay, so we're all ready to fire up the machine. I also plugged in the post analyzer cards speaker here just because the board doesn't have one, and we are good to go. So we'll fire up the power there, and we'll give it a good jump. Oh, it's definitely complaining. And based on the beeps, my guess would be probably RAM. Let's take that out of there. And yeah, we definitely had some problems putting that in there. Let's pop it back in and see if that makes a difference. To reseat it. That went a little better this time. Turn the power back on to the power supply, and we'll give this a quick little jump. No, it's not loving the memory, I don't think. Yeah, okay, so what I'm seeing here is on the, you can see that mark right there on the RAM. Now, this RAM was working just fine a moment ago. And yeah, look at that. The gold tooth just came right off that RAM stick. That's interesting. So let me just see if I can find another stick of DDR memory here. And I do have some here. And that looks okay. I'm going to try the other memory slot because I don't know if there's anything in that that could potentially causing that problem. And so we'll pop that in there. And that's what could be complaining about though as well. Okay, we have that in there. And pop on the power. Give a little jump. Yeah, it's giving us postcodes this time, but still complaining about the memory. I'm really curious about what that was. If that was just the RAM, or if that was the... I don't know if that was the RAM or the slot itself. I'm just seeing if I see anything inside that slot that could have potentially caused that, but I don't see anything in that slot that was in the way. You know, I'm gonna, maybe it's insult after injury, but let me just see if we can pop that in there again. Yeah, so it goes in no problem. Let me fire it up again, see if we can get this posting. Well, same errors. And yeah, no issues to the slot. So yeah, that's very interesting. Could have just been that stick of RAM too. It could have just been used so much that it just, the gold teeth came right off it. I'm gonna spray some contact cleaner in there too. That slot is pretty dirty. I'm talking about the second one we tried. Okay, pop it on as well. Oh, do we have post? We have post! Number 4 is working. Okay, well, that booted very quickly once it was fired up. So we have an award BIOS, amazing award BIOS, which is awesome. AMD Sempron 2400 plus CPU with 256 megabytes of memory. 32 meg is showing as shared memory, and that's the built-on video that we have. I'm going to go into our delete render setup. I mean, just talking about, it's not remembering the boot order probably because of the CMOS battery, which is fine. Okay, let's go into advanced BIOS features, and that's where, of course, all of our different features that we would have for, our boot devices are all here, quick power on, self-test, and all that good stuff. And I'm just running this for a few moments to see if we have any freezing. Let's see if there's any issues. I'm getting no heat issues here, which is great. Chipset is nice and cool. We have it working. Let's leave it working for a few minutes. I'm just going to push down on the board again like I was doing earlier. And I'm not... The only thing I can think of is I jostled the RAM there. Because sometimes you can get a micro crack in the motherboard, and if you flex it, it can, in the PCB, it can jump or short or turn off, but I'm not getting that issue now. Okay, so we have our frequency voltage control. So I guess we can do some overclocking here and all that good stuff. Not doing that with this system today. It is something we can certainly take a look at in another video when we actually build a machine. And my intention with these motherboards, when we get them working, is putting them into machines and getting them going in some form. It's fun to do that. Let's go into PC health status. So we have our core voltages, CPUs running at 32 degrees Celsius, and our fan speeds running just shy of 5,000 RPM, which is good. And it's nice. I love how the CMOSs have the built-on PC health status menus. It's really good to be able to go into there and check on these things. Okay, I'm going to exit without saving. We didn't do anything. And it's going to complain. Of course, it won't be able to boot. There's nothing there to boot from. Good luck detecting anything. But yeah, I mean, we have another working board. So we have 2 working and 2 not working. And we have one more board to go through, and hopefully we can get that going. But for now, this is an AMD Sempron 2400 plus with the 256 megabytes of memory that we installed. And of course, it had a little bit of an issue getting going because the memory slot is dirty. Plus, I'm sure this didn't help anything either when we were testing it. So I'll make sure we don't use that for anything in the future until I get it repaired. Let's move on to board number 5. And here we are with motherboard number 5. Yes, and do we save the best for last? I'm not sure. Hopefully we end this series with a working motherboard, and that would leave us with 3 of the 5 boards working. And believe it or not, we have another AMD. I think it's just absolutely crazy. We have 5 motherboards, all 5 being AMD motherboards. So that's pretty cool to see. So let's go over this board quickly and see what it is. So we have an Asus M2N, so Mary to Nancy -MXSE motherboard, and I mean it looks like a baby form factor motherboard, and we have our PCI Express, I believe that is, and our 2 PCI slots there as well. Now, interestingly enough, we have a IDE, but it's on the side here, which I think is different for sure. I mean, obviously, for space-saving design of some sort, instead of mounting it anywhere else on the board, they popped it on the side here to be able to plug in IDE drives. Now, I'm seeing SATA here as well. And so obviously that would be more for legacy than anything else. And then we have our our ATX power supply. This is a 24-pin and also has the 4-pin header, I believe, up here, 4-pin pinout. And we have our 2 sticks of memory, which I believe, probably based on what I'm seeing, is DDR2. So we have our very similar layout. Again, and it's an Asus board. We have our 2 PS2. We have a serial, parallel, video, 4 USB. One thing I noticed though is that there's slightly larger space between these 2 here versus the ECS motherboards that we saw earlier. And we have our networking and built-on networking, and as well as our audio. So I found boards with the more IO on the shield, or in the more IO accessible on the back, the less expansion you'd get, obviously, because they're really saying, hey, we have it all. It's all built on. And I remember when motherboards started coming out with built-on video and built-on audio, and it was frowned upon, but it was all based on what you wanted it to do, and that board that you were working with. Okay, so I think it's time to pop this on and see if we can get this going. And we have to make sure we remember our 4-pin. So many times that I was working on motherboards and systems when I was growing up, and I always forgot about that silly 4-pin power adapter or power connector. Just anyway, don't know why I did it. Just always forgot it. Okay, plug in our PS2 port. Plus, we'll use the onboard video as well, just for good measure. And our memory. So where did I put that stick of memory I just had? Truly, come on. Okay, there it is. I just had it in my hands. I don't know where I would have got rid of it. Now, are we going to be so lucky to get this going? I really hope so. I'm really, really, really hoping that we end the video on a good note. I mean, the memory popped in, no problem there. Get our post analyzer card plugged in so everybody can see what's going on there. Hit the power supply. Power supply is on. Nothing so far. It's not bad so far. Let's see if we can turn it on. And we have post codes. Yeah, the beep codes will definitely be helpful right now. I'm going to see if I can get the pinout for this motherboard and see if I can get the post analyzer card connected for the speaker. Okay, and we're back, and what I did was I looked up the motherboard manual and found out where the speaker header was specifically that I needed, so we have that all good to go. And so, yeah, we'll fire this up. The only thing I did off camera was I took my brush and just cleaned out the RAM slots again, just because I wasn't liking how this was seated or sitting inside the slot. So I did do a bunch of cleanup there as well, just to clean up the slot a little more. I should be doing that before putting the stick of memory in, but again, just wanted to clean that out. So I'm just calling out that I did that. Let's power on the power supply and turn on the switch. We have post, I think. There we are. Checksum is bad. F1 to run setup and 2 to load defaults. My feeling is probably due to that bad coin cell battery. Let's just go F2 and load setup to continue. Okay, and here we are in our CMOS, and we have our system date and time obviously are incorrect due to the fact that we don't have a working coin cell battery. It is showing the system date as 2002. It is showing, however, the BIOS update of 2.58 is 2006. I believe this system is 2006, 2007, even though it's showing 2002. I could be completely wrong. I'd have to look up the motherboard manufacturing information to verify. And so going through this, we can go in and configure our IDE configuration. It just shows onboard IDE controller. You can enable it, disable it. Disable it, you're freeing up some resources if you're going to be using SATA anyway. And then it shows the SATA enabled here, and then our RAID functionality. Really neat that it has RAID functionality built onto the board. I think that's pretty cool. And so our primary, we don't have any hard drives connected, so that's normal. And then our system information. So, showing the build date of July 10th of 2007. So, it's showing 2006 down below, 2007 there. So, I would say that the date of 2002 is just a default date that gets thrown in here. But it's showing our CPU is an AMD Athlon 64 at 3800 plus, which is running at 2.4 gigahertz. One of those, of course. And then our system memory, I have a gig of RAM that's just thrown in here, but it's showing that it's usable up to 896 megabytes of memory. So I'm thinking that the video card is utilizing the rest, so it's just showing usable. And that's one of the disadvantages of onboard video, is that it borrows the memory from your system to do that. Now, you can always run the PCIe slot that's on here, video card, and then disable the onboard video, which would free up your memory as well. And so I'll get out of there, no problem. And it's your standard CMOS settings. I just like the animation going along the top here, and they really started to push, ASUS really started to push their CMOS here a little bit in terms of looks and all that good stuff. CPU configuration. Oh, okay, that's pretty neat here. So it shows it just shows the configuration of the processor, what it's currently set at, all the information about the CPU. What really neat is that you can go in down and select overclocking configuration and choose what you want to do for your CPU and your voltages, and you could tweak it to get some more juice or performance out of the processor. I'm not going to do any of that today, but definitely neat to see a CMOS BIOS that allows you to do that. And our chipset, again, just chipset features, onboard device configuration, so you can go in and change what is on the board, and your plug and play configuration when it comes to all your resources and all that good stuff, and then a USB configuration as well. Power. So we have the power options under here. It's a hardware monitor. I want to click on that again. I just love looking at these hardware monitors just to make sure that everything's kind of checked out and everything's working really well. So it's showing the CPU temperature of 39 degrees. Motherboard temperature of 31. I mean, that's fairly good for this. I mean, the fan slowed right down as we've been using it here. I'm running at 3,000 RPM, roughly 3,100 RPM, which is really good. And it's not detecting a case fan because we don't have one connected, so that's normal. And then under boot, we have our boot priority device. So we want to boot from floppy first or different hard drives, all those good things. And yeah, I mean, that's really good. So I would say that this was another success. I mean, here we are, motherboard number 5, and it is up and running. And so we've had 5 motherboards today. Oops, sorry, motherboard. We've had 5 motherboards today. We've been able to successfully get 3 motherboards functioning, which is just an absolutely amazing good news story. And, you know, getting 3 of the 5 working, I mean, I think we were just super lucky that we only had one issue with the other 5 that we did in the previous video. And so, but even having 3 functioning out of the 5 that have been, you know, taken out of old computers or thrown away or in a pile of parts, it's just really good. So this one gets definitely gets a thumbs up as well. So that said, I think we've gone on long enough for this video to go through the 5 motherboards. So again, if you like today's video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification button. You'll be notified the minute I release new content such as this. And I really appreciate all of your time that you spend here with me going through this. Really exciting we're able to do this together, and I'm just happy to share this content. So again, we will see everybody in the next video. Bye-bye.